Oops, I didn't change the. Let's see.
Now.
Designing new enemies.
Oh my gosh, we're live.
Tim and Michael.
I have my screen shared. Yeah, I have my screen shared.
All right. This isn't the right category, right? Cheery. But how do I change it? Voyagers of Nera. Oh, yo. Okay, it's that easy. Sick. Okay, done. Updated. I updated it. You can do a better job of it.
Who's echoing?
That's me. Sorry.
When Michael talks or when I talk? Michael.
I just muted my own stream. Did that fix it? I got Twitch chat open over here so that I can write as myself in the side
I'm actually
chat.
not even logged into Twitch, so I don't want to try to remember my
our view count, Tim.
Do I not count? Do you not count as a viewer?
I don't know, honestly. Oh yeah, sorry about that. It was capturing my audio of me listening to my own stream. That's gotta be terrible.
Yes.
We'll give people a couple of minutes. Ali Cantina got a first-time chatter already. We haven't even talked about anything cool yet.
Wow, look at that. Bringing in the new folks.
Shinboku, another first-time chatter. Welcome. Shinboku, I hope I'm saying your name right. Ah, that's dope.
Thanks.
Love the game. Thank you. That's really kind. How did you hear about us, by the way? I always want to ask this whenever we get the chance, but how did you guys hear about us? Ali Cantina or other chatters would love to hear from you as well. Avid survival crafting gamer. Tight. Perfect. Exactly what we hoped. Love the game. Thank you for the alpha invite. Not the brightest. Thanks for joining our chat. A friend of mine saw it on Steam, so friends and I have been playing the demos together. Awesome.
Steam is working.
Yes. Part of us setting up the demo when we did was we were like, oh man, it's like, how do we reach a lot of the people that we want to ultimately play the game? And we're like, well, Steam is gonna do the lifting then, so can we use it to do the lifting now? Codiations, I don't know how I discovered you. Come on. At this point, we've known each other a while. Says one of the few people who have actually streamed the game on our Steam page, no less. L Prongs, I saw it pop up on Steam, I think, and joined the Discord. Awesome. Perfect. A lot of changes, and also some early insights to some of the other changes that aren't even live yet. So I think they'll be fun to talk through.
Yeah.
Cool. It's been a couple minutes. Why don't we go ahead and jump in? So let's introduce ourselves again for a couple new folks in the chat. Senshihira, hello from France. Awesome. Hey, moving it to the earlier slot is working.
Yeah.
That's really
Better
cool.
for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Um, let's intro ourselves for some of the new faces. So I'm Michael. I'm one of the co-founders here, the CEO for Treehouse. I don't work nearly as much on the game directly as a lot of the other folks who are on this stream, including a first-time person on the stream. We have Tim here, one of our principal designers here at Treehouse. Um, it's a small team. There are just 16 of us, so I think we're slowly crossing off the list of people who have not yet been on stream. Today, Tim, who I'm going to let introduce himself in just a moment, is going to talk about combat and also like the nuts and bolts of designing a new enemy in the game. And if you're playtesting right now with the playtest that just went live with our Discord group, an enemy that you're probably seeing right now in the latest build, he's going to talk about how the process of making it went. But yeah, Tim, why don't you introduce yourself and just share a bit about yourself, what you've worked on in the past, what you're working on for Voyagers.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. I am here in Long Beach, California. I am working on, as Michael said, I work on combat, player side, and enemy side, as well as a lot of player movement stuff. And then a bunch of sort of also, sorry, I've got like the longest tail of a cold. So you're going to hear me clearing my throat and probably pausing to cough a couple times. Um, but yeah, work on combat, players, enemies, movement, and then a bunch of other kind of like weird little moment to moment systems like our gathering attacks and some of the spirit content that we do. So a little bit of everything, but primarily my focuses are combat and player. I cut my teeth on uh, mobile shooters. I was working on those for like 8 years, including the uh, dearly departed Battlefield mobile that I worked on for a long time. And then post that, I Michael and I went to college together. Ryan and I and Mitch and I worked together for a long time at a previous studio. So got in touch with all the people at Treehouse that I knew and knew that it would be a good place to work because of that. And so came on over. It's been awesome. It's been about coming up on 2 years, I think, I've been here.
Yeah, yeah, time flies. Um, yeah, I don't know. This is probably a meme about the games industry, but it is a very small industry at the end of the day. I mean, I remember being students together trying to get into the industry, and it felt like this like impossible wall to cross. But now that we've worked in it a while, I'm just like, damn, the industry's pretty small. Everyone kind of
Yeah.
knows everyone to some degree.
Um,
um, before
yeah.
we
I'm also
jump,
our resident bird watcher, as you
yes,
have noticed.
Tim is our
Um,
resident bird expert. um,
Michael will send me a picture of a bird and say, "What's this bird?" Um, it's a key service that I provide.
um, uh, the chunk, like the big meat of today's stream, is talking about some of enemy design and like combat in our game. But before we jump into that, I want to do a quick shout out about some of the recent events that hopefully you guys are getting to benefit from, which is just today's Thursday, right? Yesterday, around noon Pacific, so around 24 hours ago, we had another playtest go live with our Discord testing community. So I see some people streaming right now under the Voyagers of Nera category. Please check them out, show them some love. I was just in one of their chats. I guess check it out after our stream. But a lot of cool stuff happening in there. So I know some folks might be joining from having played the Steam demo. But if you want to playtest even more frequently, we actually playtest like every 2 weeks with that Discord community. And that's where we show even more experimental stuff, even more rough and work in progress stuff. So if you want to playtest even more frequently, if you want to play an even bigger role in development, we talk a lot, like all the bugs people are reporting right now, the comments they're leaving, the survey responses they're filling out. We read those things and consume those very actively as a team. And we'd love more feedback. Some of the folks that were chatting earlier of like being like, I'm a survival crafting player. I was super excited to find this game. Perfect. Like we would love your perspective. Hi, Bon. Another first time chatter. This is awesome. Um, but just to go through a couple of the quick changes, we made some big game flow changes. So if you've completed the game before, you can find these patch notes in our Discord. How you complete the first biome and actually get to the second biome is a little different now. And yes, the Reef, the second biome, is accessible and playable right now. So if you're really curious, and just a little spoiler alert, and if you didn't see last week's stream, we showed a lot of what that biome looks like. It feels super different from the first biome, and that's very much what we're going for. And that's a lot of what our work is going into right now. So if you're curious about that, you could go and check that out in game right now if you join our Discord testing group. There are also a ton of other changes like crafting these trinkets, terrifying monsters in the ocean, like some of the enemies that Tim and Ben and some other folks on the team are working on right now. A bunch of sailing improvements have all just gone in. This little guy, the Bulwog, now has a function. He is now a trash can that eats all of your unneeded goodies. um, uh, hi. Hi. Another first time chatter. Holy crap, that's like 5 or 6 already, and we're just getting started. So, a ton of changes, a ton of bug fixes. So, I just want to do a quick shout out in case you're wondering what's going on in the game. We have our dev stream, we have our dev blog, but if you want to get hands on with all of that, you could be playing a ton of this and all the latest and greatest, like pretty much every 2 weeks. And that feedback is a huge help for us in developing the game. Like a lot of these bug fixes, a lot of these changes are directly from feedback that we've been getting. This little guy, the Bulwog, was actually from a player suggestion, maybe like 3 4 weeks ago, and we were immediately like, "Oh, that's dope," and solves a problem that we're actively trying to solve right now. And so now it's in the game. Uh, so please, like that feedback is hugely helpful. Don't be shy about telling us what you think because it's a huge help. um, okay, all right, cool. Let's switch gears a little bit and get into the actual thing that people maybe showed up for, which is like how does like the actual process of designing an enemy happen within a game, at least within our game. And I think that connects with a lot of like what combat is in our game, and some of our thinking that we have for it. So I'm gonna pass it over to you, Tim, and let me know whenever you want me to reveal the screen for you, screen share.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably just flip over to the screen share now. I'll kind of
Cool.
go through a little bit of the process of how we start making enemies, what we think about while making enemies, how we test them, um,
I know.
and I will start with this very fun old art. So typically we start when we're making a new enemy. There's kind of two um, angles that we might come at it from. There is we have a concept for an enemy. This is usually what we do. Like we typically have um, enemy concepts, especially when we're like building a new faction or whatever. And it's like, okay, we have a couple of archetypes. We have range, melee, elite are kind of our three primary ones. And so it's like, okay, we need a new faction. We need a ranged and melee. Um, and Mitch will usually draw some very beautiful art that is evocative and gets us all excited, and this kind of helps suggest um, what their behaviors might be, what kind of attacks they might do, and that comes out of these concepts, the lore. So here we can see the shattered enemies. They have undergone some changes if you're playing in the alpha. Um, that we'll talk about later. But um, we when we decided to introduce shattered enemies, we had these sort of concepts. These guys have been around for a long time, and that's something that sometimes gives us a leg up. We have assets that exist already,
Yeah,
and
Mitch has been a very long running hype machine in terms of flooding our brains with potential designs. Not all of them ultimately make it to the game, but
Mhm.
it is setting the fuel that makes it a lot easier to jump into these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's typically what we have. We'll have like some concept, maybe one of these as a static mesh or some sort of asset in game that we can build off of. Um, and but then sometimes we don't, and that's when you get some crazy designer art. So this was our first fish. I actually think I saw like um, a report like a week or two ago that somebody this was still in the build. Someone encountered the fish, and
Y-
uh,
I
but
guess.
he's there. This is our first fish. Is a cylinder with a skull attached to it. Um, and then our crab enemy used to look like this. I don't know who put that one together. And then this was our very first boss, who I love dearly. I have a video of this guy that I'm going to show because it's very funny. And this is when we decided to kind of start uh, specking into some bigger enemies. It was like, uh, all right, well, I'm going to make a big sphere and see how it goes. And um, yeah,
The our fish tube enemy, I feel like, is almost an Easter egg at this point. Like, we forgot to delete his spawner at some point, and he's just still in there. So
yeah, it's like,
people,
I don't know, maybe I should just remove the attack so that he just swims forever. And occasionally you just see like a really deep fish skull tube swimming in the distance.
and I think this boss enemy has been lovingly named Charles.
Something like that. I don't know if I don't remember the specific human name that he was given. But uh, yeah, he was in the game for quite a while. He eventually became the construct who has now become a little bit more of a standard enemy. More elite plus. I don't know what the category of enemy
Yeah.
the
I
it was
guess
from.
that's a trippy thought that the construct enemy, which is like this big imposing golem, started as this happy sphere.
A sentient speech bubble. He's only happy when he's not attacking. He makes different faces. I think that was key to the charm. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of where we start from. It's sort of like, uh, do we have a uh, a world building hole that we need filled, or do we have a gameplay hole that we need filled? And we kind of go from there. And then we start thinking about like uh, what where like in the player progression these enemies live. Like the reef hobs were originally our starter enemy, so I kind of designed their attacks around like really simple patterns that are super readable to like teach you the basics of dodging, blocking, attacking. um, Now they're in the reef and it's like, oh, these guys are probably too simplistic because in theory you've played for like 4 hours. And so we'll be touching the roof hobs later. But the shattered kind of came with that same perspective. um, and uh, and then other things like how what it's like to fight these enemies in the world. We uh, you don't really ever encounter these guys as like a single enemy. So there's sort of uh, the question of like when you're fighting one reef hob. Here, I'll switch my stream to Unreal if my stream will ever let me do that. Um, Discord has been hating me lately. Anyway, so yeah, how what the experience of fighting a group of enemies compared to one of these enemies,
Oh, I don't think it
or
changed.
one if in the case of Brutes Runa.
I don't think it changed the stream focus.
I hadn't. It froze, and then my whole thing got better. Nope.
You're, oh, trying to switch to editor.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right,
It's
we're
there.
ready. Okay.
Hey,
So like, if you give myself a little bit of
can you zoom in a little on the gameplay part of the yeah, there we go. Tight.
yeah. So, like you would fight an attacker, for instance, or seeing our cheats. And this is a pretty simplistic like what you attacking? Attack pattern. If he were to actually attack me,
Staring you down.
there we go. This guy likes me. This is like not very hard to block if I actually showed off my skills very well. But you add in like 3 attackers, and all of a sudden like these patterns are a lot more um, difficult to deal with. And this is the environment that you usually are playing in. So like thinking about like we can make one of these enemies like super engaging, and then it would be absolutely impossible to fight like a whole lot of them. So that's just something we consider as we are uh, um, planning out enemy attacks and sort of what their behaviors are. Um, yeah, the new weapon. You're going to see a lot of new stuff here because I'm just going off latest. Um,
I mean,
uh,
hey, that's why we do the dev stream, to show off all the goodies.
um, yeah, and so once we've designed some of their um, sort of gotten a sense of what we expect them to do, we get them. I try to get them into editor as quickly as possible, and this is a area where you learn so much uh, about how the enemy's going to play. I let's just switch to sharing my whole screen, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm just changing it.
I keep trying to move your camera to keep you in frame as Discord pops up and down ever so slightly.
Okay, hopefully here I'll live on this
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
while.
No, let me let me
Um,
let me worry about that.
like the Wisp, who's our ranged guy that we've been seeing in the Embrace. He was originally going to be basically like a transposition of um, uh, the spitter, right? Like one single arcing projectile, um, and but he didn't have some of the things needed for that, and so I was getting him the attack set up, and when I just like was testing it, all of a sudden this is what his ranged attack looked like, um, and I was immediately like, oh, this is way cooler. Like this flood of projectiles is way more interesting than the single fire. So getting into build is like a big key part of um, experiencing what that enemy is going to play like. And so I immediately pivoted. I was like, I'm not doing the single shot anymore. It's going to be some burst. This was
Can you play it
like
again?
a bullet hell. I'll just leave it. Uh, I put like 3 of these guys in the map, and it was like, um, way too much for what we're looking for from gameplay. Even though I extremely would, um, you know, if we were making a game like this, it would probably be pretty sick. But it's not the game we're making, um, so we changed it a bit. I dropped him down to giving like a burst is what we see now. And so uh,
But you're saying that this was like a happy accident compared to
absolutely happy accident.
starting
Yeah.
from the reef hop spitter.
Yeah. And I'll show the Reef Hop Spitter for those of you who have not seen it in a while, or new people who haven't gotten to the reef because they are in the reef
Oh
now.
yeah, they're in the reef now.
Um,
These are our channeling our pandemic memories of an enemy that spit on us being the single most horrifying thing we could think of.
so this is kind of the whoa, finish loading. So this guy, he fires sort of a single arcing um, projectile that damages you or you avoid it. And you know that was essentially going back to my like this is teaching you how to play. This is a pretty easy projectile to deal with if it is alone. Uh, um, but uh, sometimes you end up with something that's more fun and more evocative and feels like it's these little wisp guys being like a turret that is firing at you is like um, you know way cooler. But you can see I slowed it down. It's a 3-shot projectile basically to they actually scale up over time. The more difficult ones are um, the more difficult ones I think fire 5 projectiles. So they get harder over time. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the first process. We get them in game, start testing them out. Like almost immediately, I was able to pivot uh, without even getting it into uh, in front of players. But yeah, and then we have really quickly tried to get it in actually in the world. I think Christina last week promised that I would talk a bit about how spawning works. So uh, I can give a quick spawning secrets so that you all know how this stuff works. Let me load up the world map while I talk.
Really quick, while you're talking about this, I don't know how much folks see like game editors, but if it looks like quite a technical process, it's because it is. I think later Tim's going to show some of the behavior trees and sort of like the node setup for how like an enemy knows how to function. On one hand, I think it looks like it makes a lot of sense, like it's quite intuitive, and on the other hand, you're like, oh, holy crap, that's how many things have to come together for a game to work. And that's also just kind of true. Like that's also just the reality. Although, like truthfully, like even just comparing to when we were students a long time ago now, I don't think it's ever been easier to learn how to make games, which is also kind of cool. So it's just like anyone can download the software and start making things, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it is a reality of just like like it's a lot of things coming together for a game to make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much like I don't know. I spend a lot of time Googling or looking up YouTube videos for like very specific technical details of Unreal, and there's so much free stuff um, on how to navigate um, these engines that it's wild. I mean, compared to like when you needed to buy books or whatever, or know how to write your own engine than us. But yeah,
the
it's much easier now than it used to be for sure.
Some of the memes of like programmers just looking on Stack Overflow as the way that they figure out problems, it's like also true for game dev. It's like if you can
Yeah.
find good documentation, it's like such a gold mine. um, Hopefully someone's run into the same problem as you. Shimboku had a question that I think Steph has answered. The elemental orby dudes, or I guess the spitters as
Yes.
well. Yeah, please go ahead.
Everybody. Yeah. There's a weird bug where projectiles go through uh, geo in the world. It's been a super nasty bug that we've been trying to solve for a while. It's a definitely something that's rising up the priority list, especially as these guys become like a little bit more turrets. The slower spitter projectiles were like a little bit more. I don't want to say like that it wasn't a problem because it sucks, but they didn't happen as often. Where like
Yeah.
this, it's you can be walking through an area and
It,
suddenly like 6 projectiles come flying at you through a wall.
it's kind of funny because some it doesn't happen for everything, right? Like there are some actors in the world where it's like if you're like actually like picking up like a dormant spirit or something, the egg of the dormant spirit will block projectiles for you, but then like the
Mm-hmm.
giant rock next to you won't, which is really funny. But no, that's a bug. We're working on it. It is a huge pain in our butt, but we are gonna fix it.
It's,
But before you show the world, I saw another comment from Senshi. One of the things that hooked me on your project beyond the game is your energy, your investment, your sympathy that we feel through the videos. Don't change anything. Thank you. Uh, we broadly are like, we want to develop the game in a way that we can hopefully like actually like interact with people and build a relationship with how we're making games, because we think that's just sort of how games should be made nowadays. And also just like the reality of like, we're very dependent on feedback to actually make something good. Why does that have to wait until after the game is launched for that to be a thing? Which led us to wanting to play test like pretty much every 2 weeks starting since like May of last year, and that's been like really really valuable for us. So thank you guys for actually giving us your feedback, because it took us a long point to get to the spot where our game was finally in a position where we could actually show it and hear something. So we're really glad to finally be at that point. So really appreciate that. Sorry, Tim, you're gonna share something looking into the worldview.
yeah, no, I totally agree though, and I think like especially um, uh, there's a lot of like uh, weird secrecy in like how games work that I think like doesn't really serve anybody. So it's like, hey, whatever. You want to know how the enemies spawn? I'll show you how the enemies spawn. It doesn't actually. You're not going to steal our ideas and bankrupt us. Um, let's see. Okay.
um,
Um,
this is in the Embrace somewhere.
this is somewhere in the Embrace. Um,
Oh, the
looks
arch.
like one of the outer islands. I don't know. It's wherever the camera was when it loaded. There's kind of the main island. So this is like turn off some of these boxes so that zoom around a little slower. My editor is slow as heck. Sorry, I'm going to make my editor look terrible. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of like, you know, where you come out of. There's the lighthouse, and you come out through this cave right down there. But let's talk about like this enemy. Um, so yeah, the way that we spawn enemies is kind of it's uh, pseudo random, uh, sort of fixed. Uh, we we set up these sort of spawn tables that have randomized numbers of various actor types, and so when you enter like you can see this box.
This
Sorry,
is all
isolate.
boxes.
I can't isolate the boxes. You can see they're sort of like right there if you're not colorblind. Sorry if you are. When you enter that area, it spawns enemies from this table if they're not.
Oh, I can help with
Um,
my yellow mouse. I made this yellow for the stream. Uh,
Thank you.
this box right here is the one that Tim is referring to when you
Um,
enter this one.
yeah. Uh, we kind of walk through a data table. Is what these are called, where we have certain types of enemies, and it tries to spawn certain numbers of them at the various points that have been laid out by the level designers. So you can see them right here, and um, so that's why you'll kind of see like some variance. We want to have a good amount of control over what shows up in certain areas. We don't want to just have like, well, there may be a little bit of this coming as a sneak preview that I'm not going to say anything else about. But we don't generally just kind of want enemies spawning everywhere. We want to have like we have parts of the world that have things that the enemies are guarding, fight to get those things. And so we want to have decent control over where enemies are spawning, or at least ensure that enemies are spawning in a certain spot. And then uh, from there, we add a little bit of randomness so that it's not the same experience every time. You're not like, I know exactly what I'm going to encounter when I get here. You can just kind of generally have a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Uh,
that's sort of how our enemy spawning works.
I think just a comparison to like games in other genres, just to zoom out a little bit. I think that's like different from potentially other games. Like I think a lot of older like Dark Souls and whatever, they're like this specific enemy is always in this point every time you round the corner, and the first time they're gonna hit you, you're not gonna see it, you're gonna die, and then you'll learn. But you're almost like banking on that being a repetitive thing so that you can learn and master it.
Yeah.
Versus a game like ours, which is more sandboxy, where you might be like farming the same camp multiple times or exploring, and then like hopefully that experience is different in some way. Spawning is a chunk of logic that can help vary that. But
Hmm.
also, as Tim was mentioning, like there's some things that probably still need to be true, which is like you can't run into a crazy super overpowered enemy the moment you step out of spawn, because then you'll just die and be like, what the hell. uh,
Yeah.
it's a lot of it is like, what are the levers for how we control that experience? And it's a fairly like complicated structure to set up that, how we can like control the what levers we have to control the experience.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a balancing act, and we're kind of constantly going back and forth on like, yeah, how much variance versus how tightly controlled. And our system is pretty flexible. It supports like um, these ranged enemy towers um, are actually uniquely can be set up to, they always spawn one ranged enemy on the tower because it's no sense to spawn a melee enemy on the tower that's inaccessible to the ground. The point is there's a ranged guy up there. So we have a lot of flexibility to like, we can do a huge spawn of enemies over a huge area and have it be very random. Or we can do really tightly controlled, like specific enemy on specific spot. Um, and it all just kind of depends on what we want out of a given location. But yeah, so that's enemy spawning. And we've now made our wisp. I'll show off some of the um, we, um, we have as far as enemy behaviors go, we have kind of some general um,
Oh, so, sorry, 1 second. Did we just get a raid? Sterny Twitch, thank you so much. Raiding with a party of 25. Oh my god. Um, Thank you so much for tuning in, and also for bringing so many folks to the stream. Really, really appreciate it. That's incredibly kind. Um, if people are uh surprised at what we're showing right now, we are game developers working on Voyagers of Nera, an ocean faring like survival crafting game that currently has a Steam demo out right now. We play test with like our Discord community every 2 weeks, and we're pretty just open about sharing everything about how the game works and what we're working on and building. Right now, we're in the middle of a dev stream where we're talking about combat and the process of designing enemies. Tim just showed some of like how spawning in our game works. But if you're into like exploring a magical ocean world, battling like crazy, like dark reef inspired enemies, or like monstrous magical enemies, please check out our game. People have been dropping a lot of Moana meets Valheim in reference to what our game is, which we'll take it. Like we're pretty happy about that, which is pretty cool. Um, Sterny Twitch is a brand new first time chatter, and now has rated us, and was just playing the game. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Um, that's really cool. Thank you so much. But yeah, Tim was just, I think, showing some of the inner workings of how we script some of the enemies. Sorry to interrupt you, Tim.
no problem. Yeah. So yeah, our enemies. We have a lot of kind of general based stuff that lets us create a basic enemy pretty quickly. So like our behavior tree, as I was sort of uh, temporarily showing off, we have kind of a general behavior tree that is um, how enemies decide what they're doing. This is a whole thing. But uh, they kind of they try to do ranged attacks. If they can't, they try and back up. If they can't, they do melee attacks. And this kind of gives us like a functional structure to start. And the melee guys kind of have the same thing. They don't do ranged attacks. But we can kind of create a new enemy, give them some attacks, and then they just start working right away, and that gives us a good ability to get enemies, new enemies in the game, stood up, fighting very quickly, which is awesome. And then we can do changes from there if we want specific uh, behavior changes for enemies, or it's very hard to talk and fight at the same time. Um,
uh,
uh,
the secret sauce, it turns out, is getting them working as quickly as possible, which
yes.
relies on well organized, like yay documentation. Apparently, if you guys saw in the blueprints, like this logic that is sort of pre-packaged about like here's all the different things they think about when trying to create distance to a player, and here's all the different things that they go through when it comes to engaging a player or ranged attacks and this kind of thing, which I think meant setting up the second set of enemies was a lot faster than the first. Is
Yes.
accurate?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, under the hood, in terms of their behavior, the reef hobs and the uh, shattered are essentially identical, um, and you get a lot of variance just through what their attacks do, and what the timing is. On the attack durations, the attack cadence, what the cooldowns of these attacks are, um, gives us a huge variance in what it feels like to attack these enemies, which is pretty cool. And after we get enemies up and running, it's all feedback, baby. And like a big early player feedback was everyone was like, "Wow, these enemies look like weird fire elementals," and that was a big point of confusion for people, is why we had all these fire elementals in our water area. And so we really quickly made these changes of now they're blue. They have these cute little masks. If you compare it to the original video, the projectiles are a little different, but that's the kind of stuff that you can see when you have a team of people playing your game on Discord every 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
It matters.
uh,
Uh,
Miss Perfect, thank you so much. Another first time chatter. Lovingly designed games are fun to play the demo. Thank you so much. Yeah, to echo Tim's point, the feedback is pretty huge. I think there's a lot of like stacking momentum that happens within games. In this case, being like, oh, this feedback of the enemy being like thematically coming off kind of weird. It's like, well, okay, we actually have a lot of reference in terms of like how we look at magic in the world, or like this motif of masks that shows up for like the cute little spirit buddies, and the idea that these are almost like magic that has become corrupted over time. Like there's actually another space we can go to. And then for sure on the design side for like combat balancing, which I think you were also mentioning, Tim, of just like, what'd you say? It's all numbers, baby. um, yeah. Were you gonna show some spreadsheets? Your
yeah,
secret balance
I
intel?
spend so much time in spreadsheets. Um, I use a lot of
Oh, you gotta
we've
zoom
got weapon
way in.
damage calculators. This is sort of our not exact, but a ballpark
You're gonna have
spreadsheets.
to zoom way in.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, nice.
Um, what if we're gonna steal my numbers? Uh, um, so this is kind of where I balance our weapons, and try and make sure that their DPS is roughly equal, or comparable enough that you might want to pick one over the other. And this kind of compare this against enemy health to figure out how long it takes to kill enemies. And then we've got some defense calculation stuff for player, um, sort of player effective HP, how much damage enemies should deal to players at various tiers of defense, uh, you may notice that these are listing armor pieces on certain bodies. Maybe that's a topic for a future dev stream.
um, if you've been playing to this point, you'll know that you know clothing options I think have changed in the character creator, and that is related to an upcoming change that you'll be able to see in a playtest near you very
Yes.
soon. And I think I mentioned earlier, but we have a bunch of new people who joined. Uh, Anyone can playtest the game right now if you go to Steam and download the demo. Voyagers of Nera, it's just right there underneath the bar. But we playtest even more frequently with like more frequent changes, more experimental stuff with our Discord group every 2 weeks. And so they have a fresh uh, set of content that I just saw another streamer playing that just went live yesterday. So it'll be less frequent for when we update the Steam demo. We definitely want that to be like more stable and more polished and stuff. But if you're curious about a bunch of the changes that are happening right now, or like when armor and other things come into the game, like please join our Discord. We just added another batch of people to play the game yesterday. Um, love the basic clothing, but I'm a sucker for blue. Yeah, people are getting a surprisingly good amount of customization out of some pretty basic options, which is pretty awesome. um, uh, you were gonna talk about what were we gonna talk about next? I already forgot.
Um, I on feedback a little bit more. I have some sort of uh, shout outs that I wanted to give to people of
Mm,
player feedback that we've uh, things we've changed in the game recently due to player feedback that highlights once again how invaluable the Discord is. Um, After I clear my throat, sorry. The We added. You may have um, noticed if you were playing recently. One of the big uh, issues players were having was sticking on enemies or feeling like they were passing through enemies, and so we added some stickiness to help you kind of get closer to a target and then stay on that target when you're near them, which is a change that I don't know if that's live in the demo. I think that might just be uh,
is that one live in the demo? I think that one might be live in the demo.
that might have made it into the demo.
Yeah.
But that was a big point of feedback from players that we were looking at, and then some changes to enemy respawning. Enemies used to spawn at night, and that created a horrible situation where it was like, I killed dusk, and then 2 minutes later they respawn on top of me, and so now enemies spawn 30 minutes after you kill them.
Yeah.
Um,
We had so many painful clips of someone like barely surviving a fight and then night falls and then just like the camp respawns right on your face. It was just
and enemies used
terrible.
to be stronger at night.
Yeah. And the combat it's called a motion warping system to sort of like adjust some of the animations to not carry you past the enemy as you're just swinging on it. And it seems like a really small change, but from the feedback, like clearly it's super impactful for like the feeling of doing what you intend. Already we've seen a ton of feedback of combat. Like we're hearing a lot of like, oh, it feels jank, it feels like I'm not quite doing what I want, and that feedback has largely gone away, and it's just like a really clear before and after where this tiny little thing like it was actually a good amount of work, right? But it can often look really small if you were to compare a game side by side, but like certainly tons of people feel it.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely. Um, and we've
yeah,
made some changes to the
prongs.
spear. These are fresh off the. Um, they're pretty secretive, but the spear should be a lot easier to use. A lot of people sort of say that the spear felt a lot less useful. So try it out if you were a chagrined spear player. You may find that the spear is not as difficult as it used to be.
Fresh off
Uh,
the something something.
Any questions, by the way? Feel free to send questions.
Yeah, yeah. If anyone has questions about combat broadly or any other aspect of the game, we're super happy to talk about it. Sarah Barra, personal PTSD from the Nightfall enemy respawns. Those were some great clips, but yeah, I'm sure that was sacrificing your morale for content.
Um,
Yeah.
I did make a change that I haven't fully integrated, but enemies should no longer drop
Throttle?
from the sky. That's something that we'll be removing that, I guess, quote unquote feature. Um, so you won't be seeing enemies raining on top of you anymore. Uh, much as that was a pretty fun thing to have happen.
Did I miss a follow? Did someone just follow and I missed it? Kaka PP, thank you so much for the follow. Is that the right way to say your name? uh, Thank you so much for following. Any plans on making the spear a throwable item?
Um, I wouldn't say lands, but I would say there is a reason that we didn't bind anything to right click on the spear yet. Um, no plans, but aspirations. That's the sort of the hope
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
theories that we
I think that's
going.
fair. I think
Um,
there's a lot of stuff that could be like fun throwable weapons, honestly. And we kind of have an offhand slot with the shield, but
mhm.
this is all in the like we really want to get to it and then TBD on the priority.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
would not be surprised at all if there's like a big chunk of like extra content that we'd want to like think about when we can actually do that. What amount of that happens before and after early access is probably TBD. Because there's a lot of other things like just having more enemies, like for biome 2, for then biome 3, that we're like, we gotta do this before early access. And it's like that's
yeah.
just we feel like that's a must. So yeah, it's on the list, and there's just the constant negotiation of when. But I think there's like a lot thematically that you'd almost just like instantly be like, oh, I want to throw my spear and stuff like that. That just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Um, totally. Uh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that we want to do, and uh, hopefully we get the chance to do it all. But we're working through improvements and as much as we can.
The name's eye says, how about the flying breakdancing crabs? That is such a weird bug.
It
Um, where
it is. Do we? I think we know what it is, but don't know how to fix it. Is that well?
I
Don't know
think,
is probably the wrong way
yeah,
to
I
say
think
it.
it's more that the fix is surprisingly complex, and we're like, well, it
Yes.
doesn't break anything at the moment, so like we'll get to
Um,
it when we can prioritize it. Right now, it's like if you're walking and then you see a crab and it happens to spawn in like a certain position relative to you, you'll see it suddenly zoom to its like new position, but play its walking animation. So it'll just like scutter through the sky.
yeah, and I love when they kind
And
of do like they flip upside down sometimes. Yeah, I do think a fix is in the pipe for that, but uh, yeah, it's hilarious. So um, I don't know. Sometimes we don't fix things because they're funny. A good example of that is what we call the gorilla jump, the dodge jump,
yeah.
um, was a bug that um, happened once, and everyone was like, "Wow, this is a really fun way to get around." Uh, and so it was like, "Okay, we can either fix this and remove it, or why not just make it real?" And so now the gorilla jump is real, and you know the bugs are sometimes gifts.
So yeah, if you want a long jump in the game, you can actually dodge roll and then jump right toward the end of it and sort
Yeah.
of carry yourself with more momentum. I think the whole area is called level metrics, like it's Jurassic Park or something.
And it's like super out of date. Basically, none of this is is correct anymore. But here we have our level metrics. Also, it's got the reef in it. Um, but
Yes.
this is our test map.
Sarah, if you haven't played around with that, yeah, you can sort of make some certain jumps and stuff that you can't make normally if you do a dodge roll jump.
Yeah. Um, It's it is a little bit like I do think there may be some designed around. Um, uh, so try it out.
How soon till we can play with a trident? Well, I mean, that's maybe
I
it's an
mean,
idea for like a future, like a spear you level up into. I mean, both,
yeah, why not?
pokey
Um,
weapons.
I mean,
Maybe it should be
I'm
spear.
not gonna say no to that because
Yeah.
that's our artist's problem. Um,
Mitch, are you in the chat? Are we gonna level up into a bident and then a trident for
and
future
yeah,
biomes?
that's our tiers is the number of dents. At the end, you've got like a septident.
uh, oh my god.
Actually, yes, confirmed by Mitch.
Mitch, you're getting exposed right here. First time chat. You've been on the stream more times than you've chatted in stream. Oh my god. uh, that's funny. Everyone loves a good pokey weapon. Uh, oh god, it's already 12:56. Crap. Um,
To wrap
was
up
there other
time.
stuff we were gonna get to?
Uh, I got nothing else.
Okay, tight.
Um,
I
Perfect.
completely lost track of
Perfectly
time. That's
scheduled.
my bad. What other questions do people have? We used to always like to keep like this chunk at the end if people just have questions about any part of the game. So we're cutting into that a little bit. Um, but yeah, if people want to ask anything about where the game's at, what we're working on right now, open season. We will have an array of prongs. You heard it here, folks. Prongs, the core measure of how you've progressed in the game. Oh, this is a fun one. What IRL bird is the spirit companion bird most similar to? Oh, that's from Steph. um, that's a great question, though.
No, I mean it sort of gives me a bit of a um, it's got sort of a hawk like beak, um, but that's not really how hawks fly. Um,
What?
so
I'm sorry. One more time.
well, hawks like soar a little bit more. They don't flap. I mean, they do flap, but like you see, you like watch a hawk fly. They're like a lot more like uh, this is sort of more like this looks like a crow to me. It flaps like a crow.
Huh. I mean, this is all bird news for me.
Well,
Oh.
I mean, am I taking to YouTube? Am I finding us videos of hawks flying?
I mean, I believe you. I believe you. Uh, Tim has unfortunately repeatedly dealt with me taking pictures of birds while on walks, or like a bird that lands on my roof, and then being like, "Yo, what is this?"
Will we get to see living animal versions of the animal spirits in the game? Giant turtle, ray, lizard, or bird?
hmm. Uh, TBD. I think that
Pay no
is.
attention to the giant turtle in the background. This is an old turtle.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. So as you guys might remember from an earlier uh, uh, trailer of the game, we had this like giant turtle dude, right? I think the game has changed a lot. A lot of our focus on spirits within the game has elevated and changed as we've really seen like people gravitate to that, and us also being like, dude, we think this is like one of the most special aspects about the world. And so real life turtle, I think like the turtle's dope, and we just want to find a way to use that in the game. In
yeah,
terms
I mean,
of whether or not we'll see like the living manta or whatever, I think that's maybe a little tougher because we're like, I think the same effort that would go into making super dope ass spirit thing is probably the same effort it would take to make specific creature. And you can probably tell by what's already in the game of like rescuing and reawakening the spirit of the ocean, like this guy that you see on stream actually right now. We wanted to be like this big high moment in the game that leads to you having this like new ability to like skim across the water, and like that's a lot of the loop and the payoff that we think is probably more unique to the game. So like one day we'd love to just like make the world feel more alive, have this other sort of like vector of things to explore and find. But for now, like that probably ranks below dope spirit, a payoff and encounter, or like crazy terrifying enemy that you didn't realize was lurking underneath you. Um, this might be for a future stream, realistically, and also just to save something in the tank. But we had a play test just yesterday where people were like screaming in Discord because of the crazy encounters with some of the enemies that we are working on right now to make exploring on the ocean a little more memorable and unique and exciting. So hopefully people will get to play that in the next couple of weeks with the next update or two on our internal test group.
Yeah, I think you may find that you're not asking for leviathans for a different reason you were told not to ask. There may be another reason that that's not a question.
Screams of happiness and cuteness, dead on, Sarah.
Definitely, yeah.
The names that will we get any underwater locations to explore besides the ruins, like a little village or something? Underwater broadly, we want to be full of a lot more life and things to encounter, right? And that might be like some of the same thinking that we were applying earlier in the stream that Tim was talking about, like how do these work as encounters? And like the ruins are, I think, are an example of like, hey, here's like an encapsulated thing where it's like an experience where you go through, you explore, you fight things, you get something for your efforts. But then also just like out in the open ocean, how do we make that feel alive and interesting and exciting? And so I think there's a lot more coming there, and we've been thinking about that a lot in terms of like, dude, this could be like one of the most special parts of our game. Like, how do we lean into that? So yeah, exciting things to come. I know we're already a little bit over, but if anyone still has any questions, super happy to chat about them. Sorry to keep everybody, Sarah, are you not an underwater lover? I thought you getting jumped by some of those enemies was some of like the most fun content out of our September playtest, all the way back in September. Sarah was playtesting with us very early, and that was like a lot of life for the team. I love some. Oh, perfect, perfect. Well, if you wanted to have some of that same gut wrenching, exciting moments, but also with the ability to fight back, you're gonna be in a cool spot. Thank you, Sarah. um, any other questions from the crew?
I'm not gonna show it because there's some very in-dev stuff, but we are working on making it a little bit easier to fight back on those enemies too underwater. A little easier, a little more
Mm-mm.
fun. So look forward to that.
Yeah, some of the
Underwater
same
combat's getting some love.
some of the same polish and love, and some of the same feedback. I think of getting to do what you intend to do. We're looking at that really hard. Um, and just to preview it a little smidge, you know, we just had this playtest go live yesterday, which means next playtest will probably be in a couple weeks. But if you want to jump in right now, you can still join our Discord. Just shoot us a message if you want to sign up, and then we can get you into this playtest. We have this playtest going live until Monday morning, and then please, if you're playing, send us your feedback, send it in Discord, fill out the survey, use our feature upvote board. If you haven't seen our feature upvote board recently, it's had a lot of activity. So just to give it a little plug again, this thing was so helpful after the December demo, where just tons and tons of people gave us their unfiltered feedback about like, hey, I wish this was in the game. I wish this was in the game. And we have just been reading the crap out of these, using it to prioritize a lot of our work, and crossing a lot of these off, right? Like in-game clock, time of day, being able to sleep through the night are in there. A bunch of these others have had a bunch of work and iterations. Some of them are going to need to continue to be tuned. So we want to like jump on that quickly and then keep working on it. So please like contribute your ideas. This is all super helpful stuff for us. And I think something that's come up a few times, and just to plug an upcoming dev stream, AK, if you're in the chat, I'm still expecting that this time works for you, but if it doesn't, we'll find another time. The next dev stream was going to be about some of our backend in the game, right? We have one backend engineer at our whole team of 16, right? Everyone's wearing a lot of hats. And that's going to be about the backend, and also like some things like dedicated servers and how like networking works between players. Dedicated servers has come up a lot. We are going to have dedicated servers by early access, but the actual mechanism of how that works is often like not something that people talk about, and pretty interesting. Going to be another sort of like pullback from a different part of the curtain for making games. Couple other notes here. Loving this game so much, I carve out time in the morning to play before I leave for work. Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
I really, really appreciate that. Hopefully, we don't make you late for work or anything. Um, and yeah, please again, hop into our Discord. We're chatting in there all the time. The feedback's just insanely helpful for us, and we're really grateful for it. And yes, to Chiri's point, I should probably be doing my job. If you haven't wishlisted the game, please do. Please, I got to remember to chill. Wishlist the game. Tell your friends. The demo is multiplayer for up to 10 people, so please feel free to bring friends into it right now as well. Yeah, wishlisting helps us a ton. It helps us like climb in visibility. Same with following our socials and liking our socials, resharing those. Super helpful for us to get visibility, which is always super hard for any indie team. Um, you're watching from work. That's funny. All right, really appreciate it, guys. That's it for our stream. So we're gonna sign off. Thanks again so much. Uh, Dude, Cheery, remind me about this. We should figure out how to raid. Because some people are playing the game right now. I would love to figure out how to raid them. Wouldn't that be sick? Um, do you know how to do that? God, trying to learn how to stream on
Doing a
Twitch has like
little Twitch tutorial live.
seriously though, Steph is right. It's like I've never felt so old like trying to figure out how to stream.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad that all I had to do was click on a room in Discord because I have no capabilities beyond that.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the people watching late at night or while at work. Really appreciate it. Um, can I like click on someone and then just raid them? Is that like a thing I can do? Is there a button for that?
Yeah, thanks everyone for
Perfect.
watching, and I'm definitely gonna bring some more combat stuff on again.
Oh, it's just working. Yay, sick. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody. Oh, slash raid. I'm gonna type it. I'm gonna do it. I don't know what's gonna happen after.
Are we off?
I think we're off. I think we've successfully rated them.
All right.
Good job, Tim.
Thanks. Yeah. Hopefully people enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think it was a ton of great content.